joining us on Zoom. Jill is on Zoom. Okay. All right, we're going to reconvene our meeting and continue talking about the budget with conservation districts. And I believe Jill Arachi will start. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Jill Arachi, the Executive Director of the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts. And I have two colleagues, district managers with me. I think it would be good for them to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Byrne. I'm the district manager of the White River Conservation District down in Orange and part of Windsor County.
And good morning, I'm Lauren Weston. I'm the district manager for the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District.
Welcome.
Thank you. Our district managers will be doing most of the talking, so I'd like to invite Jennifer to start, and I'll be here to help answer questions. Lauren has a PowerPoint which she'll be sharing with you.
Great, thank you so much. So we'll be doing a very brief introduction to the conservation districts and our current appropriations request that we are here today to request be included in your budget memo. You can go ahead to the next slide. So conservation districts were really created out of the Dust Bowl era back in the 30s. The USDA, the Department of Agriculture, then the Soil Conservation Service, which is now the Natural Resource Conservation Service, were out on the landscape, and they quickly realized that in order to extend conservation assistance to more landowners and land stewards and farmers, they believed that the solution was to establish democratically organized soil conservation districts to lead the conservation planning effort at the local level. So that's really where we come from. We are subdivisions of state government. We are run by an elected board of 5 residents of our districts. So across the country, there's over 3,000 conservation districts. Here in Vermont, there are 14, one for every county, but some of us are watershed based. So we are really rooted in the communities. We cover all of Vermont, and we have over 60 staff right now across all the districts and the Vermont Association of Districts. And we work with landowners and land stewards to make management and conservation decisions. We also work with towns and conservation commissions and help provide. We work right at the juncture of private, state, and federal money and try to really piece everything together to move projects along. We connect people and organizations and resources. And we cover the gambit of natural resources. So soil, water, air, plants, animals, humans, and energy. You can go to the next slide. So this is, believe it or not, the easiest way we can explain our structure. We are overseen, if you see at the bottom, the landowners came together back in the 30s to form the actual districts, and it maintains, that level of leadership today. So we're overseen at the local level by our elected supervisors. And then at the state level, the Vermont Natural Resources Conservation Council, the NRCC, is really our state agency. It is considered an agency of the state, I should say. And on that council sits a designee from ANR, a designee from Agency of Ag, the director of the state extension, and then 4 of our elected supervisors also sit on the council. So I believe you can go to the next slide. This year, the 14 conservation districts are requesting a base appropriation of $3 million for fiscal year 24 to cover ongoing operational costs that are necessary to meet our statutory obligations. This year alone, we wrote 168 grants to fund our work. And so this core funding is really going to be crucial for us to continue to provide service in the community. And next slide, please. So increasing the NRCC's budget to $3 million would be able to allow for the coverage of the district managers' salaries and providing benefits to us and our staff, really retention of our agricultural and conservation specialists, and recruitment and training of new staff members. We do a lot of community engagement, and so being able to, provide per diems and reimbursements for speakers and participants to, as we conduct our outreach and community assessments that are part of our legislative mandates, as well as some technology needs and software upgrades, and administrative and grant management capacity support. We leverage a lot of funding for federal match. This appropriations would really help us to access the federal money that's coming. There's quite a great deal of funding out there that we don't want to leave on the table. So we are here today to request that we be included in your budget memo. Our current request is through the Agency of Ag's budget, since NRCC is currently embedded under the agriculture budget. In many years past, we were under ANR's budget. So we continue to work very closely with ANR and access and distribute a lot of their funds, their grants in our communities. So we also have submitted info onto your website regarding this ask that gives a little bit more background and information on this. Next slide. I think I hand it over to Jill.
Just wanted to recap. Thank you very much. Last year, the legislature gave us an additional $250,000 to NRCC's core funding, which enabled us to more than double what the base funding we give districts every year to $20,000 per year, which is very valuable for districts. It enables them to do things like meet landowners and communities, provide services that aren't funded by a specific grant, manage their board meetings, things like that, conduct research. Next slide, please. In addition to that $250,000, we received $248,000 in one-time funding. This was for capital and equipment needs, so some trucks to enable districts to do more out in the field, including their tree plantings, which you see highlighted here, as well as a building in Poultney Meadoway. Next slide, please. I'm handing back to Lauren now.
Hello again. So with this request for additional funds, we hope to continue to do our great work in our communities. Conservation districts work in different program areas based on their community needs. So many of us work in natural resources restoration and conservation. This can look like working on lake shores, stream banks, riparian areas, forests, and other projects that typically have water quality and habitat benefits. This also includes tree plantings. For instance, my district is planning to plant about 12 acres of trees this spring. We also have about 12,000 trees and shrubs that we are planning to sell, that we are selling to private landowners for them to plant on their own lands through our annual tree sale. The photo you see in the top left is actually of a project that we just completed at Lake Carmi to restore an area of the lakeshore to a natural condition. We also work in stormwater, and so the project in the image shown here is from Caledonia County. It was designed to treat stormwater that's collected in municipal drainage systems to reduce phosphorus and other contaminants. Before this project, the water was being released untreated into the Lamoille River. And so we all work with towns and other landowners to help address their stormwater treatment needs, including along roads, parking lots, and other drainage systems. We also work to educate people about environmental issues and ways that they can be more responsible landowners and land users. This can look like hosting events with speakers on a variety of topics, engaging the community through outreach at existing events such as field days, and connecting one-on-one with landowners. This photo is of a camp owner who received a Lake-Wise certification and sign, which means that they are doing a great job helping water quality and natural resources for their lake on their own property. And we also work in agriculture. We help farmers transition to more sustainable ag practices and help them to better understand how they can reduce nutrients from leaving their lands to improve water quality.
I think we have a question on this. Representative Stebbins.
Thanks, Madam Chair. We heard quite a bit from the Lake Champlain, I can't remember the name, The Lake Forest program, how many staff does that have?
My understanding is that program currently has 2 full-time staff.
And we're contracted to do the actual certification, going out and working with landowners. So we get that funding through, currently my district's funded through the LWAT, the Lake Watershed Action Plan. That's how we get funding to go out and do the certifications and work with landowners.
Thank you.
Sure thing. All right, moving on. So how do we do all this great work? So we work towards improving water quality, soil health, economic viability in the rural economy, and climate resilience. We do this by building trust and long-term relationships with landowners, farmers, towns, and other partners to help them make decisions for their lands. We work with them to assess concerns and opportunities, become educated, plan and provide technical assistance, design projects in-house or hire consulting engineers, and implement and monitor projects with contractors and other experts. And then we use these experiences and relationships to share information back out to policymakers and program designers. For instance, many district managers are currently providing critical leadership by serving as chairs of their respective basin water quality councils that have changed the way clean water project funding is dispersed in the Lake Champlain and Memphremagog watersheds. This work to improve water quality, soil health, economic viability, and climate resilience in Vermont is continuous and growing due to demand. Conservation districts are able to help people who need assistance making these decisions and accessing resources, and it's something that we love to do. With that, thank you very much, and we'll take any questions.
Do members have questions for Conservation District? Representative Sevilla.
The increase in base funding was
Yeah.
2 million, 3 million.
For what's in the governor's recommend?
Apologies, trying to find the right slide here. We are requesting an increase to $3 million.
And do you know what's in the governor's budget?
3,062. So we previously had 12,000 plus that 250,000 added.
What? 3,000 to 3 million?
300, yeah, 360,000
Sorry,
is our.
302,000. I'm sorry. Thank you.
So until last year, the districts were only receiving about $112,000 that we were dividing up among the 14 districts. From the state, everything else is grant funded. Last year, we did get an increase to 360,000. And this year we're asking for the full 3 million. We asked last year as well. We're just a little late.
So does anyone know what's in the budget, the governor's budget recommend?
362,000.
Okay, thank you. Representative Sevilla.
Yes. The 3 million, where are those funds? Do you know where the 362 in funding comes from? Is that general fund? Is that one-time funds? And do you have a sense of where the 3 million would be coming from and how that would be sustained?
The 362 is general funds.
Okay.
And with the 248 that we received this year was one-time fund for capital and equipment. And we have not. We would like the 3 million to come from general funds so that it's continuing funding as base funding for conservation districts. We don't at this point. We don't have even one staff member funded full time for basic services. Those staff are fundamentally funded by grants. So our preference would be general funds, but we've left it up to the appropriations committees to decide where those funds will come from.
Okay, so clarification is going to 3 million would eliminate the need to seek grant funding to pay for the staffing of the commissions.
Well, thank you for that question. Our goal is that the grant funding would be for technical assistance and projects on the ground, and that this core funding would fund things that either require very small grants that are an inefficient use of time to administer, might replace some of those very small grants, and have the grant writing focus on project implementation. So we're looking for management time, research time, community relationship building time, administrative time.
So how much of your your current budget would, I mean, what is your current budget amongst
Our
the
current budget's about $3 million.
So you're looking for general fund dollars to cover the totality of the 14 districts' current budgets?
And to expand conservation district staff significantly to meet the new challenges that are coming with additional programs. So we wouldn't be seeking to replace some of the grants we have. Some of the grants we have, just to give you examples, are we have funding from the Agency of Ag for Ag Technical Assistance staff. We have funding from DEC for clean water project design and implementation. Those are two of our largest grants. We have funding from DEC, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, for tree planting projects. We have funding from NRCS for stream restoration projects. So we would continue to have those grants, but we would want the staff time to manage the district programs and grow the district staff so that we can do more, basically, and not have our district managers spending a lot of time managing a bunch of smaller grants that I haven't even mentioned because there's too many of them. Jennifer, looks like you might add something.
I would add, and I wonder if we could pull up, we have a breakdown of the ask and the different chunks of money and how we got to the 3 million. Maybe we could share that. That is in our.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah,
The document called because we have it on our webpage.
okay, good. So yes, so it's in that it's highlighted training, community engagement, board and supervisor engagement, and compensation, equipment and facility upgrades, leadership expenses, management at council. Right now, council is essentially an unfunded state agency. There used to be a staff position that was eliminated some years ago. We'd love to restore several staff positions to help districts manage all this work and be the stronger link between the districts and the state government.
Can you just confirm which document you're looking at?
We're looking at the one that says FY 2024 NRCD's appropriations request.
Okay.
NRCD.
And I would say in regard to covering staff time, we're really thinking of the district managers' time needing to be what's covered. We have staff, every district is different. My district has 7 staff currently. So it would just be take a lot of the burden off of our grants if my salary was covered more, in a standard way as, a subdivision of state government. And, our positions are also listed in our statute. So, instead of me kind of gleaning from every grant that I administer, it would be a more efficient use of our funds and our time to just use our grant funding for the staff that are working on deliverables on those grants.
We had a process where we went out to all the districts and asked them to submit budgets for what they needed, and that was where the $3 million came from. We did that over the summer, last summer. So there's specific requests from each district according to their plans and priorities.
Are any of the districts serving as the clean water service providers in their area?
Poultney Meadowy District is in partnership with Rutland Regional Planning Commission as the clean water service provider.
Thank you.
And districts are represented on the Basin Water Quality Councils, and in many cases, the district manager is actually the chair or the vice chair of the Basin Water Quality Council. Many of them. It would be good for us to count that number. The majority of them, I would say.
Yeah, it would be good to know where you are filling in those kinds of roles for us to understand and put this request into perspective.
Right.
Yeah, I would add there's some, I'm from a side of the state where we don't have the councils yet, but I know that there is hesitancy to take on the workload since we have a great deal of workload already. So to actually become the council itself, you know, we'd need a whole other staff position to do that.
Great. And I just want to follow up on one more thing, which is this is in the, your base budget with the governor is in the Agency of Agriculture's. Did I get that right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. And I assume you're taking this ask to the Agriculture Committee?
Yes, we have as well, yes.
Okay. Representative Stebbins.
Thanks, Madam Chair. It took me a minute to figure out you're actually not a state agency. Because it sounds like you're doing a lot of work that maybe the state agencies would normally do. Is that a fair assumption?
That's a great question. Districts are technically local governmental entities, and council is the framework. The State Natural Resource Conservation Council is the framework through which districts were incorporated effectively and approved. But we think of districts as a conservation delivery system because we're statewide and actually nationwide. And we have a close partnership with the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources Conservation Service. Many districts have offices provided by NRCS. So it does, we're technically local governmental entities, and NRCC is a state agency, but currently unfunded with any general funds, just funded with these grants that come through the Agency of Agriculture.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us this morning.
I appreciated the question about roles. We have many roles where we're facilitating basin planning, regional coordination among technical assistance providers, engaging landowners and providing feedback to both state and governmental entities. So that's also another role that conservation districts play. Yeah,
and I'm pretty familiar with your work, but I do think that that would help make your case if we understood all the niches that you are filling in, even if it's, I know it's different by district, but and it gets complicated pretty quickly, but I think that would help us understand this ask better. So maybe you could get us something.
Absolutely. Would you like something district by district? Maybe a little summary?
I think an overview of the niche each district is filling would be very helpful to this consideration.
Great. We'd be happy to do that. Thank you very much for your time. And we're happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, unfortunately, we need to move on because we have another budget dive to take on. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, members, we're going to shift gears and welcome the Natural Resources Board Chair, Sabina Haskell, and Executive Director Peter Gill to join us.
Rachel Lamar.
And Rachel Lamar. Oh, perhaps Rachel will be the lead. You all can take it from here.
Want to start? Just do some introductions.
Sure. Once again, I'm Sabina Haskell, the chair of the Natural Resources Board. And
my name is Rachel Lamonaco. I'm the business director for the Natural Resources Board.
And Pete Gill, executive director for the Natural Resources Board. Morning.
So, morning. And we were asked to come and give a brief overview of our budget proposal, current staffing levels, and some of the special projects that we have ongoing at the Natural Resources Board currently. So this is a presentation that's on the screen behind me that we gave to the House Appropriations Committee last week. We may not go through every one of these slides. You might be happy to hear that, but it definitely hits the highlights of what we were asked to present today and includes some additional information that you can peruse at your pleasure. So just a brief overview of all the slides that are included in this presentation, but we'll probably stick to the first few, which really address the information that you requested that we give to you today. So just as a background, I know this committee is very familiar with Act 250, but for those of you who may not be, the primary mission of the Natural Resources Board is to administer Act 250. We do that through reviewing applications for subdivision and development projects for compliance with the Act 250 criteria. We do approximately 400 application reviews every year. The state is split into 9 regional districts, under which there are staff and governor appointed commissioners that are within each district that review applications that are for projects within those districts. And our natural resources staff is composed of 25 positions funded through a combination of our special fund and general fund. In addition to that, we have 3 additional limited service positions, which are funded through a one-time ARPA appropriation, which I'll get to maybe on the next slide. And we also have 60 citizen commissioners who are really the deliberative personnel who review Act 250 applications in collaboration with our staff. For the FY24 budget, we're requesting just over $3.4 million. Those are sourced, 20% of that is sourced from an appropriation from the general fund, and 80% is sourced from our special fund, which is related to our Act 250 application fees primarily. The Appropriations Committee asked for us to itemize our carry forward funds, how much money we carry forward from fiscal year to fiscal year. Last year, we had a very small amount, just over $15,000. We anticipate the same to be true at the turn of the next fiscal year this summer. And that'll give me a segue into some of our priorities for the next year. The first of which is Act 182 of 2022, which directed the Natural Resources Board to prepare a legislative report on the necessary improvements to the Act 250 program. That report is due to the legislature at the end of 2023. And I will include here that the governor's FY24 recommended budget includes a one-time appropriation for the Natural Resources Board to hire a facilitator to help with that process. There's a $200,000 one-time appropriation in the governor's recommended budget for that.
Is that, is that included in the general fund ask or no, separate?
Separate. Any other questions about that before?
Representative Sibilia.
Just where would I find information about the process for that?
The process for the one-time appropriation?
Or the study.
Yeah.
There is not anything in writing yet, but there will be very shortly. We're doing all the kickoff planning and looking at the scope of work and RFP process that we'll have to go through. If the legislature approves the funding, it would not be available until July 1. So give a little time to just pull all of that together because it would be in the next fiscal year.
And that would imply then that your process would be less than 6 months.
Yes and no, because I'm definitely, a lot of us are digging in already and getting a lot of the groundwork, kind of just how we want to do it. And then we'll have to hire and do all of that. So yes and no. But I have a timeline that I think can work and get us still be on time for the report.
Okay. Representative Stebbins.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I know you guys came before and explained your structure, but now that we just heard some A&R budget and we're hearing your budget, can you help clarify for me your budget doesn't fall under them, but how basically your board looks to them for permits, or can you clarify for me how those two pieces connect and don't?
Yeah, the Natural Resources Board and the Agency of Natural Resources are two different state agencies, separate for purpose of budgetary considerations as well as permitting, but they are probably our closest sister agency. And there are certain Agency of Natural Resources permits that satisfy certain criteria in the Act 250 process. So those, if an applicant receives a wastewater permit, that could be evidence that is provided to under an Act 250 review for compliance with certain criteria. That's generally how it works. They are a stakeholder in our application review process, so they would file comments under most applications, but they're not part of our regulatory body. They're a stakeholder in that process.
So when I hear concerns about how long the permitting process takes, is that probably a mixture of both what's going on at ANR and then also perhaps what's going on at the district NRB?
You want to answer?
It really honestly depends on the situation. It could be ANR, it could be something happening at the municipal level, it could be something happening at the applicant level, it could be, it really, each permit is, we look and see what's missing and try to keep it moving forward, but we're sort of the catch-all, if you will. So, yeah.
I think what Chair Haskell is trying to say is that we rely on a variety of different stakeholders in the Act 250 review process, and their timelines become our timelines, you know, and there's some of that where, you know, there might be constraints internally or externally in that process, and each permit for each project that goes through the process has its own specific problems that it needs to overcome.
Thanks.
So I'll move on to some of the organizational improvements that we're focusing on. The first is that in 2022, we did launch an online application portal and new database system for Act 250 and the Natural Resources Board. We did that in coordination with the Agency of Digital Services. All of our applications are now filed online, and we eliminate the need to file any paper copies with our office. And we have a new enhanced database that really improves our data tracking capabilities. And that's something that we're very excited about. In addition, you asked specifically about our digitization project, which is currently ongoing. The Natural Resources Board was awarded a one-time ARPA appropriation of $500,000 to digitize our permit files in 2 of our 9 Act 250 districts. Really, the overarching goals of that project are to make our records readily available to the public, to permanently preserve our records, and to reduce our storage space long term. That $500,000 appropriation is likely to be expended in FY24, but the governor's FY24 budget includes a one-time appropriation of $1 million to the Natural Resources Board to continue with that project. We have the momentum now, and it's a great opportunity for us to, as we've ramped up, to continue that work.
So when you say to continue that work, 2 districts, are the 2 districts going to be complete with the 500?
That is our hope, yes.
That's a lot of money for digitizing. And which districts were they?
The first 2 districts are District 4 in Chittenden County and District 7, which covers the Northeast Kingdom.
Okay, so potentially our largest and our smallest?
Yes.
Okay. And how many more would the million cover?
I think probably 2 to 3 other districts, depending on which districts we choose. Like, as you said, there's different volumes in each district. So it depends on which districts we choose, but likely 2 to 3. So that would only get us to halfway through the project between the ARPA appropriation and the additional million in the governor's FY24 budget. We'd be approximately halfway through.
And the additional million is in general fund request.
Yes.
Representative Sevilla.
So once the records are digitized, who will have access to those?
So we will have access to a digital copy, which we'll make available on our public database. The ultimate goal is to transfer the paper versions of those records to the state archives. We've laid the groundwork in our records management, record schedules to be able to inventory those files and go off to a vendor to be scanned and eventually make it to Middlesex to be for the final resting place to be in the archives. And we'll have digital copies available to the Natural Resources Board as well as the archives. So you'd be able to search those files in either place.
So
They'll be available to the public, to the consultants who need to use those files, rather than traveling to the district. They'll be able to access them online. We'll have them available.
well, that was going to be my question. So they'll be available to the public from their home
Yes.
or place of business. And now if you want to see those records, where do you have to go?
In person, you would have to go to
How do you see those records if you're one of my constituents in Wardsboro?
our website. You would be able to access them digitally
She's saying now.
Right now?
Right now, you would go to one of the district offices, so you'd have to get in your car and go to the actual office. They're in file.
In Springfield.
File, yeah, so in Springfield or in the Essex office for D4, depending which office you're at, which district you're talking about, you go to different offices throughout the state. You'd have to physically go in to see those files.
Is there anyone who can do that for you? I mean, like, I guess I haven't filled out a permit, but work. Is it literally up to you to drive to the district office to get the records? Okay, thank you.
Representative Baumgart.
How far back will this go?
back to 1970. So all files is what everything that's in hard copy.
Onion screen, yeah.
Yeah.
Representative Stebbins.
Do people often reference past projects for future projects?
All the time.
Really?
Yes.
So
The permit history on a site can be very important when you're planning the next phase of the project. So they are referenced quite often.
for any of the amendments to an existing permit, you can go back and see the previous files.
Which for new members and for all of us, it might be helpful. I mean, I think you said there's something like 400 reviews of projects. Many of those today are amendments to existing permits. They're not new projects. Do you have a breakdown on that different number?
How many new projects a year?
Yeah.
I don't have a number in front of me, but
We'll get that for you.
but you're correct that the vast majority of the reviews that we do every year is an amendment to an original application.
Which can make the archive even more important.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly.
Okay.
So the last bullet point here is our limited service staff positions. The Natural Resources Board was awarded a one-time ARPA appropriation to hire 3 limited service positions, 1 executive director, and 2 district coordinators. Our district coordinators are our technical staff that work with the district commissions to review applications. Those 2 limited service district coordinator positions, really the intent is to deploy those 2 positions statewide to facilitate the review of ARPA funded projects without delay to our other applications that may not have an ARPA funding component. Those positions are funded through the end of 2025. very happy to have them.
Mhm.
And we're currently tracking our projects to help, fit them, to position them to help our staff alleviate some of these bottlenecks that may result.
Representative Stebbins.
Can you give an example of an ARPA funded project?
Many of the Green School Initiatives projects have an ARPA funding component. There are also ARPA funding housing projects. And there are a variety of clean water initiatives, either water, wastewater projects or stormwater projects. Those are the main type of projects that we know may have an Act 250 component to them.
I actually don't know what a green school initiative is.
I think, well, do you want to speak to that?
Go ahead and I'll fill in what I know.
What I know is HVAC initiatives.
Okay.
And there might be other upgrades that relate to school pandemic response. But I think primarily what we've seen so far getting funding is HVAC kind of
The
projects.
role of NRB or Act 250 in reviewing an upgrade to an HVAC at a school is what?
We may not need.
Oh.
But they're on, we'd evaluate a variety of different projects, and many of them may not need Act 250. Others may.
I guess I'd be surprised if a school had an Act 250 permit. I mean, given the municipal 10-acre disturbance, I mean, that would be shocking to me. So
Very few do, yeah.
Some that do and some that don't.
Right.
Yep. Yep. And then it's a matter of material change analysis. And like Rachel said, it may or may not trigger Act 250 amendment jurisdiction, depending on it. What we're doing right now is making sure that we've got a master list of all the potential ARPA funded projects. So we don't leave any behind. We don't leave any money on the table to make sure that each of those are addressed. If they are, then Act 250 projects.
a school with a Act 250 permit, would that be a private school? Is that what, I mean, I guess I'm having a hard time with this. I'd like to know how many schools might be we're talking about subject to an Act 250.
There are municipal schools that do have Act 250 permits associated with them. It's not every school that does. And really, most of those schools were in existence prior to the enactment of Act 250. So the jurisdictional trigger, I'm getting into the weeds, would be a substantial change to a pre-existing development
I know,
rather than
Yeah,
10 acres of disturbance in and of itself as a municipal project. But I think this is a very small subset of what we would actually think might need an Act 250 permit. There, as Peter said, we're looking at a master list of where the ARPA funding is being doled out by other state agencies. Don't want to ignore a project if it does need it, but I'm not. Green Schools Initiatives is going to be a very small component. It would be a rarity if Act 250 would trigger on those kinds of projects.
But they're the ones who have been, they're the ones who've gotten, that are using the ARPA money first. So they're showing up on our list before other projects are.
okay. Just as follow-up, I'd like to know how many of those there might be right now in your world.
Yep.
Representative Sibilia.
Topic.
Yep.
On ARPA funded positions, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to double check. The executive director is whom? Okay. So ARPA funded is temporary. So do we have a plan for keeping that going?
Well, I'll jump in. We're doing the Act 250 study that is due at the end of December, and certainly staffing and fees and all the makeup of the operations is all going to be a big component of that study.
Can you remind me again, Sabina, when we would see
The study?
the outline of what the study will contain, how we will know, how we can provide.
Yeah, it'll be in the next couple of months. I've got my kitchen sink list right now. It needs to be cleaned up. So
will we have an opportunity to?
we can share the process with you if that's what I'm hearing you say.
You are hearing me say that. Yeah, I mean, I think so. Why would we not do that and make sure that it's?
Yeah, no, I'm hearing you say that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Chair, I
Yeah.
hope that's
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Great.
I think we covered the main highlights of the information that you wanted to hear from us today, including our budget proposal, current staffing levels, the progress report on the digitization study, and progress report on the Act 182 legislative report due at the end of the year. Is there any other questions?
Well, thank you for sharing the whole document with us. And since you did, can we have a couple minutes? I'd love to walk through the crosswalk and just look at that.
Sorry. So the FY23 to FY24 crosswalk, you can see that we have some additional personnel expenses and a small amount of additional operating expenses. The personnel expenses are really related to increases in salaries, a reduction in vacancy savings target, reclassification of 2 existing staff positions, and we have filled quite a few open positions over the last several months that resulted in some competitive hiring.
What's the reclassification?
For our enforcement officers, we have 2 existing enforcement officer positions. They were reclassified from pay grade 24 to pay grade 25.
Oh, I see. Just
Yeah.
okay. Pay grade reclassification, not a different. Okay.
And our operations increases are really due to rental increases, as well as some of our ADS charges are moving from personnel expenses to operating expenses. So
One bucket to the other.
right. Not a wholesale change from FY23, but there are some differences.
Oh, help me understand this crosswalk. I do not.
The top and the bottom.
Yeah. So 23 is top green line is the 23 budget at 3.2. And then the bottom is the 24 recommend at 3.4. And that's okay. So it's not a huge difference.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. So I got it.
Maybe not the most intuitive, but yeah, you interpreted it correctly.
Do members have questions? Or further items that they would like to ask the folks from the NRB while they're here? Representative Stebbins.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Recognizing that you have your kitchen sink and that you haven't even done the outline yet, you have worked there for a little while and been chair for a little while. Do you expect to see opportunities for improvements in, I don't want to say, well, yes, efficiency, but I don't mean that to say, I don't mean to say that we should be squeezing something even further. What I mean to be saying, sometimes there are opportunities to streamline things, to make things more efficient.
I think that there are opportunities to be more efficient operationally. I mean, digitizing the files is a perfect example. We have a year under our belt with the database, and that those will definitely make big changes. We're going to be looking at the additional 2 staff members and what that means in terms of productivity and efficiency. There's often been conversations about is there enough staff at the NRB? So that this will be a nice, pilot look at that. There is a lot of conversation from different constituency groups, different stakeholder groups about the level, different, is there a way to do different levels of review with, are there things that could be exempted? That's a conversation that everybody has to be at the table for. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your work and for this really helpful detailed summary report of the budget. It's great.
Thank you. And we'll be back with a process document of the study.
Yeah, can you give us, I don't want to, but what's your approximate timeline on that?
I'll be able to tell you next week.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Members have further comments or discussion before we adjourn for the morning? Not seeing any. So with that, we will